Today, the streets of Los Angeles are bustling with people. However, in August 1965, it was a completely different story. 50 square miles of the city were in flames. Gunfire filled the streets. Citizens clashed with police. The city was in chaos. It was August 11th, 1965 in Watts, California. A man named Marquette Fry and his brother were pulled over by a white police officer for suspected drunk driving in a residential neighborhood in South Los Angeles. Marquette was found to be under the influence of alcohol and was talking with the police when neighbors started gathering outside around the scene. The argument continued and started to get more heated. Reports say that the cops even started beating Marquette as they threw him and his brother into the cop car. By this time, the crowd was much larger, and the officer became intimidated and called for backup. The crowd started yelling at cops, and the cops arrested a woman for spitting at them. This would be what started all the chaos. Members of the crowd started throwing rocks at vehicles passing by, and by that night, the riots had fully broken out. That night, the riots turned violent and deadly. Rioters were looting and setting buildings on fire. They were shooting at police and firefighters. Police returned fire, and many died.
But the rioters, some of them went up on freeway overpasses and started shooting at cars. And we could actually hear gunfire from our apartment, which was several miles from where the riot started. And it wasn't too long before the police were overwhelmed, and they called in the National Guard. Hundreds of National Guard troops came back from Camp Roberts up by San Luis Obispo, California.
The violent riots lasted 6 days and covered 50 square miles of Los Angeles. The riots left 34 dead and more than 1,000 wounded and caused $100 million in property damage. When the riots finally stopped, many parts of LA looked like a war zone. Rubble littered the streets and buildings were charred. Cars were flipped in the streets as well. Although the arrest with Marquette Fry was the thing that set the riots off, many believe that was just a last straw for the Watts community following many other events. Police tensions within South Central LA were very bad, as well as the great poverty that many Watts and South Central citizens were living in. At the same time, Ballot Measure 14 was enacted in California. This ballot measure would block the Fair Housing Act, which was enacted with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act was created in 1964 with the Civil Rights Act to prevent discrimination in housing. My grandpa did what he could to help the community.
Tension, but the Watts Towers Teen Post, where I volunteered, was part of President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty.
My grandpa helped kids from the Watts neighborhoods after school to help them get more connected with school.
Dr. King had spoken on the UCLA campus, and I'd gone to see him and was really, really impressed. And I think the reason that I and one of my roommates and a couple guys from the track team went to Watts to tutor was because we really believed in the justice of the civil rights movement, that African Americans were really being discriminated against and prejudiced against. And anything we could do to help would be really meaningful to us and maybe make a small difference.
The everlasting effect of the riots was not only the damage caused by the riots, but also the action that was taken after people saw how bad the quality of life was in Watts and other parts of South Central. More funding was raised to help the community. The city made living more affordable and overall improved the quality of life. Overall, the riots are a major part of the history of LA and even our country. They caused major damage, but also brought great awareness and much-needed support to the poverty-ridden communities of LA. They greatly affected my grandfather's life and led him to become a teacher after loving working with the kids at the Teen Post so much. Thank you all so much for watching my documentary, and a special thank you to my grandfather, Dale Sturdivant, for letting me interview him.